we're going to look at scientific notation. So if you have some number, it can be a decimal between 1 and 10, and that's being multiplied by 10 to a power, where n is, it can be positive or negative, but it just needs to be a whole number. So then this is scientific notation. So for example, here we have, here's hundreds, thousands, millions, billions. So we have 1,200,000,000. We can write that in scientific notation as 1.2 times 10 to some power. What we want to do is just count up the place values after the 1. So we would go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it would be 1.2 times 10 to the 9th. Now this is a decimal, so we can write this as 1.234, and then we would move that over from 1, we'd go over 1, 2, 3 places. So it would be times 10 to the negative 3. And now 6 billion, so we would write that as 6 times 10 to the 9th. All right, and then if you wanted to go from scientific notation, where we'd go from that 6, this is really like 6.0 times 10 to the 9th. So you go from that right after the 6, and you go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and put in a new decimal, and then just fill in all of those places with zeros. And then I like to just, so we've got 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, and then we've got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, and then, put in your commas. So then that would be how you would write that in regular notation. All right, so let's look at this next one. 1.347 times 10 to the second power. So it's basically multiplying it. 10 squared is 100. So we're making this number bigger. So that decimal 47, it was between the 1 and the 3. To make the number bigger, we're going to move that decimal over to the right, and then that would give us 134.7. So you just think about if you're making the number bigger or smaller. Here we're multiplying it times 10 to the negative 7th, and 10 to the negative 7th, that's 1/10 to the positive 7. And so that would be 1 to any power is just 1. 10 to the 7th would be 10 to the 7th. So, okay, so we've got our 8.04 times, that's just multiplication, 1 over 10 to the 7th. If we have a number times a fraction, we can give our number a denominator of 1, multiply straight across. So we would have 8.04 divided by 1 times 10 to the 7th is just 10 to the 7th. So you see how we're dividing by 10 to the 7th. So our 8.04 is going to get quite a bit smaller. And here's how we would do that. We would take our 8.04 and then move our decimal place over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, place a decimal, and then fill in each of those place values with zeros. All right, so final answer here, often we would write a 0 in front of the decimal as well, just to kind of highlight where that decimal actually is. You don't have to, it's just a convention. And then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 zeros, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 804. So there you've got it. Okay, if you're making your number smaller, you move your decimal to the left. So that's when you've got a negative decimal, or sorry, a negative power, 10 to negative 7, you move your decimal to the left. And if you're making your number bigger, here we've got positive 2, we would move our decimal to the right. And the easiest way to remember that is just is my number getting bigger or smaller? Great. All right, let's move on and do where we've got some two numbers in scientific notation that we're multiplying. So we can use the commutative property of multiplication. The operation between each of these is just multiplication. I'm just multiplying everything in here. So I can commute my 1 out to the front. So I've got 8.1 times 2.4, and then that's times 10 cubed, and then we have times another 10 to the fourth. Okay, now we just multiply 8.1 times 2.4. So we've got 4 and then 32, and then multiplying our 2, we'd get 2, and then 2 times 8 is 16. And just add all that up, 4, 4, 9, 1. And then you just count how many places are behind a decimal. And then so that you just place your decimal there. Since there were 2 place values behind a decimal, we need 2 place values behind the decimal in our answer. So 8.1 times 2.4 is 19.44. And then we're going to use the power property of, the multiplication property of exponents. So we would get to just add up the 3 and the 4. So it would be times 10 to the 7th. And the final step is to rewrite in scientific notation. It's not quite in scientific notation yet because this 19.44 is not between 1 and 10. So just rewrite 19.44 as 1.944 times 10 to the first power. And then that's being multiplied times that 10 to the 7th. Okay, and then we get to use the multiplication property of exponents and just add up these exponents of 1 and 7. Again, so we get to do that a second time. So our final answer is 1.944 times 10 to the 8th. And that is done. Okay, let's do another one. We've got 4.2 times 10 to the negative 2 times 6.3 times 10 to the 5th. So I'm going to use commutative property. My 6.3 is going to commute out to the front. So I've got 6.3 times 4.2, and that's times 10 to the negative 2 times 10 to the 5th. Okay, so I regrouped my factors. Now I need to multiply 6.3 times 4.2. So I've got 6 and then 12, got another 12, 24, 25. Adding those up. I've got 2 numbers behind decimals, so I need 2 numbers behind decimals in that final answer as well. Okay, so that's 26.46. And that's being multiplied times 10. We just add exponents, so negative 2 plus 5 is 3. And now we need that final step, which is to rewrite in scientific notation. So our 26.46, I'm going to rewrite that as 2.646 times 10 to the 1. And now that's being multiplied times 10 to the 3rd power. And just using that multiplication property of exponents there. So we've got 2.646 times 10 to the 4th. Just add exponents. 1 plus 3 is 4. And that one's done. The last one I'm going to do is involving division. So I'm going to go ahead and just divide my numbers. And then here, when you're dividing with exponents, you get to subtract those exponents. So it would be 10 to the 6th minus those 3 from the bottom. So it's going to be times 10 to the 3rd, but let's figure out what our number is here. So I would take 7.74, and I'm going to divide that by 4.3. And when we're dividing with a decimal, it's easier just to rewrite that as 43 or 77.4 divided by 43. And the reason you get to do that is because this started as 7.74 divided by 4.3, and I can just do anything I want to a fraction as long as I do the same thing to the numerator and denominator. So I can rewrite that as 77.4 divided by 43. Okay, so that's my first step. So I've got a new problem, 77.4 divided by 43. And let's see, if I took 43 and doubled it, I'd get 86, which is a little bit too big, so I'm just going to have that go in once. And then when we subtract our 43 from 77, I would get 34. And then carry down my 4. And the decimal just goes right up above the decimal here. So 43 goes into 344. It's not 10 times because that would be 430. I'm going to just see, maybe it goes in a few less than that. Let's try 8, 24, and 32, 34. Ooh, bingo, got it. All right, so it's going to go in 8 times with no remainder. All right, so my number here, when I divide those, was 1.8. So my final answer is 1.8 times 10 to the third power. And that's done.